man, if I could go back, if I was talking to myself 10 years ago, niching down is the best thing I ever did.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the High Level Spotlight Sessions, where we showcase awesome marketers doing awesome marketing. Today, I am psyched to be joined by Kasim Aslam. He is the founder and CEO of Solutions 8, which has been in business for 15 years now, I think, and has worked with thousands of clients, including the U.S. Army and Harley Davidson. Kasim, thanks so much for coming on the show.
Chase, thanks for having me. Appreciate you.
15 years? You don't look that old.
Yeah, I'm 17, so I started when I was 2. Yeah, no, I'm 35. I'm dying. I'm midlife crisising right now. That's why the hair is what it is.
Gotcha. Nice. Well, 15 years for sure makes you a veteran in the industry. So congrats on that.
Yeah, I appreciate that. It's kind of a lie. I started as I was selling software, and my software agency had a marketing piece. You know, you build the software and then you'd help people market it. And when the economy collapsed, it collapsed around me. I was in the bank that brought down Lehman Brothers. I was in the bank on Bank Failure Friday when the FDIC came in. It was the largest bank failure in U.S. history, and I was building software for them. And I had a receivable that I found out that I was not going to receive. So overnight, basically, my whole business crumbled. And in software, when you build software, you get a small deposit on the front end, and then everything else happens after the fact. And so I had to lay off everybody that worked for me that day. And my house was foreclosed on, car was repossessed, all the bad things. And the only thing I could do was marketing, because you didn't need money to float labor the way that you would for software. And so I started trolling Craigslist for little back alley website, fixed deals. And that led to SEO, which led to being a marketing agency. So, 15 years in front of a computer, but it's been an evolution.
Sure. Wow. That's a cool story.
Yeah, it wasn't.
It wasn't cool.
Yeah.
But that's an interesting origin story, I should have said.
Yeah.
Well, so it sounds like you've dabbled or you've worked in different areas of marketing, but if you go to soul8.com, there's actually a subheading there somewhere that says PPC is all we do. Mm-hmm. And so it's a really powerful message if you're looking for a PPC provider, right? Why did you decide to sort of laser in on one specific service as opposed to going out to the market and saying, hey, we do SEO, we build websites, we do PPC, we do social media, a variety of services?
So that's where we started. We're called Solutions 8 because we used to have 8 core service offerings. We did web, software, apps, SEO, PPC, content, videos. I had a full-time videographer. I had a green screen studio. And it was such a nightmare trying to be everything to everybody. Mm-hmm. And when you're everything to everybody, you're never the best, because there's always something that's failing and you always get yelled at and there's always something going wrong. And I actually brought on a business partner about 5 years ago. Well, I hired a gentleman who I'd worked with in the past. He was my client, and his business ended up getting tanked by a bad investor. And so he's one of the smartest people I'd ever known. And so I started stalking him to come work with me. And he came and he started as an employee, and then I ended up making him a partner. And he was the one that identified, he's like, dude, all the clients that last are successful with Google Ads first. So initially, we weren't even going to niche down. We were just going to start with Google Ads, figure out what kind of client, because the nice thing about PPC is it lets you know who actually has a viable business model. If I drive traffic to your site and the traffic doesn't convert, so many people blame the agency. In my mind, I'm like, well, what's wrong with your site? What's wrong with your offering? If I actually take relevant traffic and I drive it to your site and it doesn't convert, that's your fault. We know the traffic's good because the traffic networks have gotten so good at assigning relevance. So we were just going to use Google Ads in order to identify the businesses that were viable and then sell them all the other stuff. And that plan worked for a while, but finally we were like, man, we're crushing Google Ads. We're the best in the world at it. Let's just niche down to this. And so it was a slow evolution. But if I could go back, if I was talking to myself 10 years ago, niching down is the best thing I ever did, ever. And everybody says it, and it's so scary because you don't want to commit. But here's my advice is I wouldn't niche down from an industry perspective before niching down from a service perspective. So figure out your service slate first and think about it as crosshairs, right? So it's an X and a Y axis. The X axis, this is the service that I have to offer. And the reason you want to do that is because if you niche down on an industry basis first, you're still encumbered with all the tools. You still have to do website and SEO and PPC and content and video and graphics and social and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So it's still the same amount of overwhelm. Now it's just for a specific audience. If you can go figure out the 1 or 2 or 3 services that you're insane at, and I think HighLevel does this kind of for you, right? Like you can just open up the HighLevel dashboard and be like, all right, I want to do reviews and I want to do funnel builds and I want to do web or email or whatever. And then now it's like, all right, I've got my services. Then when you go to find your niche, now you have your crosshairs. Now you know exactly what you're targeting. I'm doing, lead generation for Montessori schools, or whatever it ends up being. And that type of specificity, nobody can compete with that narrative from a marketing perspective. And so as long as they can afford your rate, you're basically the perfect fit.
It's such an interesting conversation. And I love talking to PPC people because I think, so there's so many things that popped out of my mind as you were just saying that. So the first is lead gen. And so we are having a lot of conversations as we go into SaaS mode of helping businesses really take a hard look at, okay, are you just going to the market as a lead gen agency? And does that mean just Facebook ads? Because that is a dangerous territory. Like you're always going to be the first on the chopping block. And like you said, you're driving traffic. And if it's not working, they just come right back at you and say, this traffic stinks. Now, if you're just running Facebook ads, that might be the case, but it's hard to make that argument against AdWords because, like you said, we have people searching for the specific thing that you're supposed to be, the provider of. So there's no mismatch there. Like it's got to be on the other end. But now AdWords, and I agree with you, at our agency, we would always push AdWords first. Like we have to start with AdWords to see what's going to happen from there. And we can retarget with social, but like if you need customers right now, it happens with AdWords. And the question is, how much will it cost? But AdWords is such an interesting beast because one, it was always so hard for us to find great PPC guys or girls because most of them that are good are off on their own. They don't want to work for an agency, right? They're like, no, I get it. I see how this whole thing works. I'm starting my own company. I just do AdWords and I'm in super high demand. Has that been the case with you guys? Is it, have you basically, what I envisioned is, okay, great PPC people probably just look to train people up and that's how they get great PPC employees. Have you seen that same sort of thing where they're like mavericks and it's hard to get them to work for you?
So the people that start good, you're absolutely right. They're going to make way more money freelancing, have way more freedom, build their own brand equity. The benefit we are having now, though, is Google is so hard to contend with in terms of the changes that are taking place. And so if you're going to be your own PPC provider, you need to be Johnny on the spot. And Google's no longer just search. It's search, display, GSP, YouTube, discovery, smart shopping. And so now it's so multifaceted. Google as an ecosystem, the breadth and depth of it is so expansive that I actually think it's really hard for individuals to stay on the forefront. That's why you'll notice really good PPC people, if they're an individual freelancer, they tend to niche down even further. They'll say like, I work solely and specifically with YouTube discovery, or I work solely and specifically inside of the search ecosystem or shopping or whatever. So I am seeing some people that historically I'm like, gosh, they never would have come and worked for me. I've actually seen some people approach me and say, hey, I'm interested in, I'm actively trying to, and I hope this isn't a sales pitch at all, but it came up organically. I'm trying to buy agencies. I'm trying to buy Google Ads agencies specifically. And so I've had a couple of agencies approach me that in the past would never have been receptive to that narrative. Now say, man, it's so hard to keep up. It's so hard to keep up.
That's fascinating.
And it's an interesting change to the ecosystem. You need that T-shaped marketer that Ryan Dice over Digital Marketer talks about. You need the breadth of knowledge across, multifaceted ecosystem, but then the ability to dive down deep into one or two individual facets. And so being a part of at least a small agency gives you that ability to have that thought leadership, that knowledge trust that you can go draw upon. And so I think that ends up being a prerequisite. But hiring it's the most important job I have as an employer, as an entrepreneur, as a CEO. The people that we hire are the most important part of our business. And man, I've had to bend over backwards. I pay 20% more than any other agency pays. My employees all work from home remotely on their own schedule. Nobody checks in and out. I don't count paid time off. Like if you need time off, take it. Like we've basically had to say, hey, you get to be an entrepreneur more or less just inside of my umbrella. Yeah. And I have phenomenal people that work for me, but it's that's a tough, and that's always going to be tough for every agency everywhere.
I think it's so true, but you brought up a good point. Like if you're driving really qualified traffic and it's not converting, then the next step is, okay, we need to figure out what is wrong with your website. What is wrong with this landing page? And if you're not equipped to go do all those changes, then you are, you do need to find somebody who can. So that makes sense that traditional PPC people are looking, for ancillary support in those areas. But I think the question that I'm sure most of our viewers are thinking right now is, do you guys do white label PPC for other agencies?
We do. That's much. So I'd say more than half of our business has a white label element to it. As a matter of fact, my agency, I would, and Chase, forgive me, I'm going to be so arrogant for a fraction of a second. There are 500 people on the planet that know we know about Google Ads, and half of them work at Google. Like I'm digital marketers traffic coach. So not trying to be a jerk, but just to say that I know more about Google Ads than most, but our agency lacks all semblance of polish. And the reason for that is like, we've been white labeling for so long that I just never needed to build that whole ivory tower infrastructure. So even with sales conversations now, like we don't have a good pitch deck, we don't have a good presentation process. We'll do an evaluation of your campaign and then say, okay, if you're happy, we can sign you up. And people expect like more pomp, purpose, frills, like all the fringe. I don't have any of that. I'm just like, I'm amazing at Google Ads. Pay me money or don't. So
wait, where's the 250-page agreement that I have?
Yeah, and they almost want that now. They almost want this like. So what I like is agencies that want to take that on, and we white label for some very big brands. And it's funny to see how many tiers are in the middle of that, man, because like you'll see, you know, a great big agency on the front end, subcontracting to a medium-sized agency, subcontracting to us, you know, and then there's a client who's paying 4 or 5 tiers worth of load. Now, of course, they provide value. I'm not a creative agency. You know, like if you wanted like the biggest, baddest Facebook ads or whatever, I'm just not going to do that. We do everything data-driven. So there is value being provided by our white label partners, of course, but being the fulfillment house, that's where I love to live, because I don't want to, you know, managing clients is hard and expensive. I just like to be really good at Google Ads.
Nice. Well, so being as you guys are the expert in ads, and I mean, your accolades are insane. If you go to soul8 with the number.com, you guys have some pretty ridiculous awards and whatnot. So kudos to you and your team. Being the experts, talk to me about the evolution of Google AdWords, or Google Ads as they're now, that's the current term, right?
Yep.
Over the past 2 or 3 years, and what do you see coming in 2021, 2022?
Bro, it's been insane. It's been insane. So something happened. I just shot my very first course on Google Ads. It was called You versus Google, a crash course in Google Ads. And right when I wrapped the course, Google rolled out one of the biggest changes I've ever seen that completely invalidated everything that I taught.
Nice.
Which is a nightmare. So the first thing is, if you're anything e-commerce, you have to pay attention to smart shopping. Smart shopping it's the very first time I've ever seen artificial intelligence actually at play in a real life open human ecosystem. Google has 70 million demographic and psychographic profiling factors that it's collecting on every single one of us. It knows what adjectives and verbs appeal to you most. It knows how fast you drive. It knows who you lie to, who you communicate with, what you're interested in. And so smart shopping has given Google the opportunity to identify intent before it's articulated. And so instead of being in the search ecosystem where it's inbound, where somebody goes, I want a red tennis shoe, and then now you have to compete with every other idiot that sells red tennis shoes, smart shopping identifies the people that are buying red tennis shoes through a small amount of conversions on your site, and then goes out and finds more people that are demographically and sociographically aligned with those people. And so it's like, hey, Chase, the other 4 people that, you know, they all play the same games you do, like the same sports teams you do, watch the same TV shows as you do, they bought this red tennis shoe, and you're like, gosh, I like that shoe. And then what's insane is it works. Google in April of 2015 was able to tell a woman she was pregnant before she knew. There's a case study online. Just Google told me.
I heard about that.
Dude, 5 years ago. And think about the speed at which machine learning moves. Google now knows what you're going to buy before you know. And smart shopping is equipping Google to take your entire product catalog and push it in front of buyers. And I'm seeing return on ad spends to the tune of like 4,000 or 5,000%. I did a presentation at Traffic Conversion, and it was on this topic. So smart shopping is insane. Now, what sucks about it is the way that Google tells you to use smart shopping is wrong. And that's why my course was called You versus Google, because Google gives you all this horrible advice. Anytime you see the recommended brackets inside of Google Ads, you know you're about to be taken advantage of. So you have to be really careful about, you know, learning the settings. But the thing that just rolled out most recently that ruined my life was, we're calling it broad automation. And Google has said, hey, you should start using broad match key phrases with smart bidding. And now they've told us to use broad match forever and ever and ever. And all of us were just like, okay, Google, thank you very much. No, thank you. I'm not going to do it. That's stupid. But we always test. So anytime Google tells us to do something, we make sure to test, because the testing is a prerequisite, right? To making sure that you're ahead of the curve and good. So we've been testing this for about 5 weeks, and dude, it's insane. So broad match, if you're not familiar, Google allows for various match types for key phrases. So I can say, you know, I want this key phrase. I'm a Google Ads agency. So if somebody searches for PPC agency, exact match, that means that they have to search those terms exactly. Phrase match means that has to be a phrase within the term. Broad match modified means they have to use those words in any manifestation. Broad match, Google can give you whatever they want. And so historically, if I use broad match PPC agency, I get people that are searching for, you know, like advertising company, Ohio.
Yeah, you just be throwing money out the window.
Dude, it was hemorrhaging funds, hemorrhaging. So Google comes out and says, hey, use broad match with smart bidding. And we were just like, absolute BS. There's no way this works. We start running it, and Chase, it's insane because it's working. And I can't believe I'm saying this. Like, I'm actually disappointed in myself for even saying this, but we tested it for ourselves and it worked. We tested it for 3 clients that we said, hey, this is the worst idea in the world, but they trust us, and it's working for them. And now I think we've got 16 or 17 clients. I've actually got a Slack channel pulled up from one of my employees who today at 1:36 p.m. Regina said, here's another example of broadimation working well. And it's another client that we moved over to broadimation, and it's unreal. My cost per lead has dropped. The quality of the lead has increased. So you have to have proper conversion tracking in place. You have to have quality content on your site. But if you have the right pieces in play and you're optimizing properly, I've never seen anything like this. And it's interesting because it's actually forced obsolescence. Like, it'll work me out of a job. In 5 years, you're going to go to Google and say, here's my URL, here's my credit card, go.
Well, that's their ultimate goal, right? Is to make 100%. It easy for Dr. Bob to just, like Dr. Bob can now run a Facebook ad just by clicking around a couple of times and it's up. Now, I don't know how it's going to perform, but that's an interesting thought, because that is kind of their goal, right? It's not that they care about marketing agencies, that they want every business on the planet to just start running ads. And if you can just do broad match, that makes it pretty darn easy, but it still seems pretty insane that it's actually working.
Well, you got to test it. It's not going to work for everybody. So we've cherry picked the clients that we knew it would work for. There's a bunch of other parameters too that are involved, like just decision making. But so if you're watching this video, test before you like go hemorrhage a bunch of money. But it's interesting because with broad match, they've also 2 or 3 months prior, they announced that they're going to limit the amount of search terms that they make available. And so what that means is when you bid on a keyword, the keyword you bid on and the keyword that somebody searches for and actually clicks are 2 different terms. And so there was a catalog list of everything that anybody would search for and click called search terms, where you could actually see what it is that people search for and what you were paying for. Well, Google said, hey, we're going to limit some of the search term reporting just for privacy concerns. And they made it sound like a nit. They made it sound like, oh, you're going to lose a fraction of a percent. We went in there and in one day we produced, call it 10 leads, and 6 of them were for unreported key phrases. So basically like 60% of, I can't say 60% of search terms, but 60% of our performing search terms. And so what Google's doing on one hand is hemorrhaging your visibility. You can't see anything that's working. And then on the other hand, they're asking you to take your hands off the wheel so they get to automate everything. So now everything's automated, but you can't see what's working. So even if it works, you're at this massive disadvantage because you don't know the network, the audience. You don't know what's working or how or why. It makes it difficult to optimize. Now, there are ways around that. There are ways to split up your campaigns by ad groups and just do things that are intelligently based. But it's still it's a scary ecosystem to be in, where the machines got smart enough to kind of start to do our job. Like we just saw the opening of Skynet like this year, and then next year, I think looking forward, we're going to see a massive emphasis on creative, because agencies like mine have been able to be pretty lazy. I know for a fact I'm going after this targeted segment because I can get down to the granularities, and I know for a fact if I just carpet bomb you with my ads, ultimately you're going to click. So now what's going to happen is, as that's being taken away, there's going to be a massive emphasis on intrinsically qualifying prospects according to the content they're viewing. So if you watch this video, I know you're interested in this because of the content inside the video, and then also making sure that your creative is epic and rock solid. And then the other piece of that too, which would maybe be step 2 of what's going to change, I think, in 2021 is, we think we're living in the day and age of the empowered consumer. Now it's going to get much worse. Like, people just have all the power. And now we have less of an ability with this huge emphasis on privacy. Advertisers are going to have less of an ability to go out and segment, track, report. So really, there's going to be way more awareness building. You're going to see more of the old school television and radio paradigm, where it's like, just get my name out there.
Branding.
Yes, brand building, where that branding was, brand building was like dead for a while. And because of what's happening with tracking, we're going to see a lot more media buy. I hope I just overwhelmed the conversation.
No, I was just going to say, that's fascinating. And I'd be curious to hear your thoughts on, right now, basically Facebook and Apple are at war, right? And so this is a great example. Apple's saying, hey, now the user has to opt in to you being able to, is it retarget them? I scanned through the article, but I was like, oh man, this is going to be,
it's any tracking period.
So, I mean, the barriers are going up. It's going to be, I think you're right that, and I actually love this because I think branding, I really enjoy to work on branding. It's going to be so important. It's who's telling the best story, because now it's going to be commodity, like getting the ads in front of people is going to be commoditized. Now it's just, okay, who's got the best site? Who's got the best content? Who's got the best UX? Who's got the best, conversion optimization going on? And so it's going to be interesting. So that leads us into the third point that I had for us today, which is talk to me about tips, tricks. What can you give us? What juicy nuggets? I know that you gave one to Sean the other day and he's been raving about it. And I don't think we can actually go deep into that one, but give us something that we can all sort of salivate and go test.
Yeah, quick little gimme. So can I share my screen? Is that an acceptable?
Yeah, go for it.
All right. So what I'm doing right now is I'm pulling up my Google Ads account, and I'll use my personal account. We have a testing account actually that will just make this a little bit easier.
While you're doing that, let me ask you something off the top of your head, which is off the top of my head, which is always funny when I talk to PPC people, because I don't know jack about PPC, to be honest. But I always found it was fascinating when we were trying to find PPC partners, SKAG versus non-SKAG. And it was just like so polarizing. And it was frustrating for us because I don't know which one is right. Like, this guy's so passionate that it's all about SKAGs, and this person's so passionate that they're the worst thing ever.
Yeah, so SKAGs made a lot of sense back when the machine wasn't smart, because and if you're watching the video and you don't know, it's single key phrase ad group, and basically it means you put one keyword or variants of that keyword inside of an ad group, and then you optimize separately. And I used to be a big proponent of SKAGs back when optimization was entirely manual and you couldn't rely on machine learning at all. Now, and I've still got some buddies that would probably stab me in the heart at the moment, just bloody nerd war, but I've got some buddies that still swear by SKAGs, but it's you put yourself at a massive disadvantage if you don't rely on Google's machine learning. And so I think SKAGs, I hate when people come out and say things are dead, because I don't think SKAG is dead. I think there are instances where it would still make a lot of sense, especially if you have a really myopic view. If you have a product that's just like hyper focused and this is all that I want to do, I could see some instances where SKAGs make sense, because there are times where you want to protect yourself from machine learning. There are times when you say, hey, Google, I know my business better than you. I don't want you to go and expand and broaden this, et cetera. And we're going to go SKAG and then do a bunch of really solid key phrase sculpting. So in those instances, I think SKAGs make sense. But for the most part, all of the things being equal, I would start to rely more on the AI decision making happening inside the Google Ads app. Now, I hate the software applications that are overlays on top of Google Ads. So you get all these like AI, quote unquote, driven, like, oh, we're going to optimize your campaign for you. Crap. The day one of those works, every agency goes out of business, right? The day somebody has a metal detector that can tell where all the gold is in the world, like all the gold miners go out of business. So if you actually had that software, why would you be trying to sell it to me? Why wouldn't you just go use it to run and, corner every single PPC market? So I don't buy any of that. I've got this screen pulled up. You ready for
yeah, let's do it.
Okay. So, this is our test ad account where we run in and just test various things. And one of the things, and I'll teach you how to get there too, is if you go up to tools here, you're going to go to audience manager in shared library. And then inside of audience manager, you want to click on custom audiences. And from custom audiences, click this little plus bubble. Now, this is relatively new, and it's insane what Google has allowed us to do. The very first thing to target, and this is the other piece that maybe I'll just stop and preface with Chase real quick, is people look at Google as an inbound engine. That's fine. It is. And everybody thinks Google is search, but Google is the most important outbound engine in existence. What you're using Facebook for, you can use Google for by many, 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 many multiples. The Google Display Network reaches 90% of internet users on the planet. 65% of them are reached on a daily basis. And you have layers and levels of segmentation that Facebook has never had. I'm not trying to make this a Google versus Facebook game. Google's data is more transparent. It has the ability to conversion optimize, I think, to a greater degree. It allows you for better tracking. Facebook just narrowed their attribution from 28 days to 7. So if you're good at Facebook, take what you know in Facebook and push that into Google. And I'm going to teach you how to do some of that interest-based segmentation right now. The other thing that's really cool is so much of Facebook's data is purchased, as we found in the Cambridge Analytica scandal. Google's data is intrinsically qualified. So when you're creating a custom audience, this is an audience that you would target. And you want to target people based off of various parameters. And there's a bunch of them here. This feels like a really simple dashboard that we're looking at, but it's not, because there's so much that you can do. So the very first thing that you see here is people with any of these interests or purchase intentions. Now, Google has gotten amazing at identifying purchase intent. And so if you're looking for people that are looking to purchase, like a wedding dress or bridesmaid's dress, like ultra specific, but you could do airline tickets, travel, cars, tennis shoes, things that and begin to reverse engineer Google's logic, things that Google would be able to begin finding predictive indicators for. So for example, if somebody just had a baby, and Chase, you're about to have a baby, and it's been 4 years since your last baby, and you and I both know there's all this stuff that you're just like, oh, I forgot I need that, and I've given it all away, and I have to go back for it. So if somebody just had a baby, what are all the things that we know for a fact would articulate purchase intent? And so if you have a product that has a very clear line of sight in terms of that type of, when this happens, people do this thing, then run straight to this purchase intent. Now you want to separate your audiences by ad group. So if you have two different audiences you want to go after, the mistake that amateurs make is, okay, here's purchase intent. I sell airline tickets, but I also sell bus tickets. And that's a really bad example, incidentally. But this is one audience in this particular manifestation when you really should be splitting that up into two. So talking about the SKAGs before, this is the new manifestation of SKAGs. It's single audience groups, to where you want to make sure that, you know, if I'm going after airline tickets, now obviously I'm still targeting people that want to get from point A to point B, but it's two different types of audiences. Yeah, so we want to go after purchase intent here. And then there's more. Can I keep going, Chase? Or is there?
Of course. Yeah, no.
So then we've got people search for any of these terms in Google. This is, first of all, this is a violation of our privacy. You really think about it. Think about how private your Google search history is. The nice thing about this is there's no limitation on what it is at present moment. There's no limitation on what it is that people are able to target. So just so you know, I'm a part of a mastermind called War Room, and I won the War Room's Wicked Smart award based solely off of a tactic that we use in this field. So if you think about the things that people search for, and then what those things might indicate. So for example, if you're a divorce attorney, what is it that a divorce attorney would want to get in front of for people that are potentially searching for things like, I hate my spouse, you know, how to murder your husband? And obviously I'm being funny here, but again, there are predictive indicators of potential purchase intent. And if you can start to position.
Okay, I see where you're going. So if you're working with your client, you're saying, okay, what do you sell? All right, now let's backtrack in the buying process of what leads up to that. And let's start targeting those indicators.
That's exactly right. So before people buy a computer, generally, people don't buy new computers fresh. They buy new computers because their last computer crapped out.
How do I speed up my Mac?
Yes. So people are searching for like computers slow, hacks. You know, this thing happened, this virus, this whatever. What's the catalytic event that will lead to a purchase intention but hasn't yet caused a purchase? And there's I mean, every industry, every business, every product is going to have this exact thing.
Sure.
So if you can think about those predictive indicators, you can now bid on and get yourself in front of people who search for those terms on Google, which again, I think is just absolutely insane. I can't overstate the value of this particular field.
So where do you have and maybe this is too new for you to have a good handle on it yet, but like, where's the intersection? When do I go from somebody who just searched some of those terms into the thing above where they know that I have a purchase intention?
That's a brilliant question. So what you're doing here really is you're building a funnel. And this is the top of the funnel. So this is the top, you know, and this is where we're doing brand building, awareness building. You're providing value. You're giving value-driven content. And this is your middle to bottom of the funnel, to where you're like, hey, I think you might be ready to buy now. So it's important for the advertiser to understand you just can't batch and blast all your ads to the same people. You have to, and this is, you know, it's so funny, man. I think the most important thing for advertisers is the thing that advertisers tend to be worse at, which is it's empathy. You have to empathize with your prospect. Where are they? What are they doing? Where are they positioned? What's their mind frame like? I'm going to get real woo on you, dude. So forgive me. I believe very strongly that if you need to know your prospect, your avatar. You need to know them so well that you fall in love with them genuinely. If you don't love someone, love this person and who they are, and honestly, you can't get to know a human being. You can't get to know their hopes, their dreams, their aspirations, their fail points, the things that they're worried about. You can't get to know a person to that level and not fall in love with them unless you're an absolute, complete, total sociopath. So if you don't love someone, and that also means that you want the best for them, which means that hopefully your product is actually going to give them the best for them. If you don't love someone, if you don't know them to that level, you don't deserve to advertise to them. And I hope you lose the game. You know what I mean? I want the traffic and the prospect, and that's what Google wants. They're all about relevance and intent and customer satisfaction, all those things. So if you really get into the minds of your prospect It's not just about who they are. It's also about where they are contextually. There's this whole timeline where Chase wants to buy a computer 45 days from now, but I'm not 45 days from now, I'm now. And now Chase is just frustrated that his computer's slow. So if I push ads saying, hey, Chase, come buy a computer, you're not ready for me yet. But what I can say is, like the 7 things you didn't know about speeding up, you know what I mean? Like now all of a sudden I'm starting to talk to you on your terms. And because I know you and I care about you and I want what's best for you and I'm empathizing with you, it gives me the opportunity to bring you into my fold and then begin marketing to you in a silo. I didn't mean to get like all Tupperware party on you, dude. I'm not starting.
No, I love it. And I 100% agree. And now what this makes me, and I think a lot of us would agree, this makes total sense, right? I sit down with a client and I'm like, look, this is how it goes. It's not like, hey, we just point a gun and start shooting sales. We basically have we have a funnel, right? And we need to address the different layers. And so let's create a campaign up here for these people. Correct me if I'm wrong. It can be much cheaper, right? Because there aren't as many people bidding on these people yet because they haven't become clearly defined that, they're going to buy. And then we also need campaigns for the people down here that are like, they're ready to go. Let's hit them with an offer or something. But all of this takes time, right? So how do you, I'm curious to know, do you guys, what's your minimum threshold? Like if you're a client and you're like, look, I've got an ad budget of, I can spend $1,000 a month to you and 1,000 in ads. Are you taking me on? Or are you like, no, because we're going to have to spend a lot of time together to put together these campaigns that I'm talking about? Or do you feel like you can do that with a budget, down around what the average small business is trying to pay?
So you just nailed that number. And I imagine you did that because of your experience in the agency space. $1,000 a month is the minimum because there's a data-driven truth to that. Your average CPC is $2. And so with $1,000 budget, you get 500 clicks. We optimize off of what's called the statistician's model, which means you need 100 data points to make a decision. So 500 clicks is basically 5 really strong decisions. Now, if you're a plastic surgeon in Beverly Hills and you got $1,000, good luck. If you're a real estate investor in San Francisco, like there's just no way. So it's obviously industry specific, but for your average small business, $1,000 is going to give you predictive indications of intent or of success, excuse me. And so $1,000 a month for 90 days. And that's the expectation to manage. And if you're an agency, that's what you want to tell your clients is it takes 90 days to make this work. Your first month, we're not paying for leads, we're paying for data. Right. First month is abysmal. You're paying me to make your mistakes for you. I just make them in a systematic way. I tell my clients that I'm nothing but a better failure than they are. And I'm going to fail more effectively than they'll fail. And advertising is just failing forward. So month 1 is abysmal, but it teaches us what to do in month 2. Month 2 is signs of life. By the end of month 3, I get to come to you and say, hey, your cost per lead is X. Here's where this conversation gets dangerous is, let's say your cost per lead is $100, round numbers. But you close 20% of your deals. So it's $500 cost per acquisition on a client and you have a $500 net profit. So you're breaking even. That might not work for you if you have no ascension model. Sure. The problem is, and I've dealt with this, like financial advisors are notorious for this. There are some financial advisors that bank off of the initial purchase. So, I make $600 on the average product. I need my cost per acquisition to be under $600. But there are a bunch of financial advisors that I don't care what it costs me to get you in the fold, because once I have you, now I'm going to sell you the life insurance and the annuity and this and that and whatever. Right. And so what's happened is it's a commoditized industry to where the cost per acquisition has been bid up so high that if you're banking on that initial purchase, you're not going to be able to compete with the rest of your market. And Google is a meritocratic organic ecosystem. It's like the stock market. So at the end of 90 days, I can tell you what your cost per acquisition is going to be. I can't guarantee that it's going to be viable for your business model. And
that's my favorite kind of sale.
Yeah.
The system works every time. It's just a matter of, will it work for you?
Dude, that's exactly right. I'm actually going to steal the way that you just phrased that, because I've told clients, what I say is, we're not testing Google. We're testing your business inside of a proven ecosystem. And we're going to see whether or not you can qualify. And then, I've got clients too. Like we had one guy, really good dude. He's actually still a friend of mine. He just doesn't work with me anymore. $8 million business, so not big, but not small. And they did commercial contracting, rehabs, flood remediation, that type of thing. So they basically fixed houses and buildings. And he called me up one day and he's like, the leads suck. We're not closing anything. I ran through the numbers with my sales team. I was like, totally understand. Let's take a look. So we track and record all phone calls in HighLevel. And when we're going through his calls, and his sales guys, one of them was hysterical. The guy answered the phone, hello, instead of this is the business. And then some lady's like, yeah, I'm interested in a quote. And he goes, you know what? I'm at home. Can you call me tomorrow? And right then the gentleman, the point of contact, he's like, all right, Point very well taken. But I can't, as an agency, you can't contend with that. Like, what am I going to do if your sales team sucks? So there's so much about this that's synergistic.
Someone should really start a show that's like terrible sales calls.
Yeah. I'd watch
I remember auditing one, and it was like, hey, is this Susan's Cool Sculpting? And they were like, no, this is like Diane's Cool Sculpting. And they're like, oh, all right. And they're like, yeah, they're like one town over. Have a good day. It was like, totally, but they want cool sculpting. Yeah. What are you doing?
Yeah. I've dealt with that with them. So I have an agency focused specifically on Montessori schools because I have an obsession with Montessori, and I think every child should go to Montessori school. So we started an agency.
Oh, that's interesting.
Dude, it's amazing. As a dad, you should dive deep into Montessori.
I think there's actually one here near where we live.
It's the only system of pedagogy based on the scientific method. So where you and I went to school is based off of a Prussian method that's meant to create factory workers. Like there's no, anyway. So my Montessorians will do the same thing though. Somebody will call up and say, yeah, is this such and such Montessori? And they're like, no, let me give you their number. And they're like helping them Google it. And I'm just like, what are you doing? So I think the clients need some coaching on that level too.
Well, so let me ask you before we wrap up, and this will feed into to where people can find you if they're interested. You put it really poetically, elegantly, sort of, it's going to be 90 days, it's going to be this, it's going to be this. And at the end of the 90 days, we're going to know this. Do you have that all packaged up as material for your white label partners? It's like, here's the playbook for selling PPC. Like, I mean, the way that you put it, if I'm listening to that, I'm like, this sounds great, sign me up. Or do you guys you don't do the sales for your white label clients, I'm assuming?
We don't, no. And I don't have much in the way of sales collateral. Most of the agencies that white label our services are bigger than I am. So most of them kind of have their own, and they're also bundling me with other services. I have yet to have an agency that's reselling our services standalone, which I'd love to have that relationship. That'd be great, but I don't have much in the way of collateral for it. So that would be a learning lesson that me and that agency would go through together.
Well, I'm sure you're going to get a few people hitting you up after we post this episode, so be prepared.
Yeah, I hope so. That's awesome.
Do you have a coaching program?
We're launching it now. So that's part of the You versus Google thing. I was shooting courses. I want to launch a membership where people just have access to me and my business partner because we've got a lot to share. I do coach through Digital Marketer. I'm their elite traffic coach. And so if you were to join Digital Marketer Elite, I would end up being one of the 4 coaches that you have access to.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, but we're launching our own coaching program in January of 2021. It's called You versus Google. And I'm really excited about that because I think I can have just a much bigger impact and help way more people through, education and coaching.
Well, I mean, just from this chat, I'm confident it'll be an incredible program. You're very articulate and clearly very smart. You've been doing this for a long time, so I'm sure it'll be a smash hit. Well, so people that are listening and they're like, hey, this sounds good to me. How do they get in touch with you? Should they go to soul8.com? Should they go somewhere else?
Yeah, go straight to the website. If you have a client that's in our spend threshold, which is at least $1,000 a month, and take a look at our pricing too and make sure that you like it. We do have white label pricing that is accessible to you. There's a link on the website that says white label. So just go follow that process and it'll show you I think a very steep discount. So you have very healthy margins there. But go to soul8.com. You can reach out to us directly. You can request a free action plan. We'll provide a free evaluation of any existing Google Ads campaign and let you know whether or not we think we're going to be able to make, tangible improvements. Because sometimes I'll open up a campaign and say, there's nowhere to go from here. Like it's dead on arrival and let's just jump ship. Or, doesn't happen often, but sometimes I'll open up and just say, this is awesome. Good job. I can watch this for you if you want, but what you have here is great.
Nice. Sweet. Cool. So that's SOL8, the number 8.com for anybody who's interested. Kasim, thanks so much for coming on. This was really fun.
Yeah, appreciate you, brother. Thank you, man.
Thanks everybody for watching. See you in the next one.